Yes, hello everyone. We're continuing with a new lesson. Now, the topic of our new lesson is how to code variables. In our previous lesson, I talked about the logic behind variables. Now, we'll learn how to use these variables in Java and what their types are. We'll go through everything step by step, friends. Now, first of all, what I want from you is, if you've just opened IntelliJ IDEA, normally, if you've opened any project, it would have opened in the section I showed you first. But if it hasn't opened, meaning if it's not like this, it's probably like this. Let's bring it up like that by clicking Close Project. So, it's probably looking like this. From here, you can click on New Project and continue. Or maybe you already have one ready if you're saying, Teacher, it was just like what you showed earlier. Then you need to do it like this. Go to File at the top and select New Project. We're opening a new Java project. Open everything from scratch. That is, take notes on every topic, one by one. Open it up and start coding. Here, we'll start by saying J001. For example, variables. So you should do it this way too. You can go as far as you want, like J001, 02, 03, 04, etc. Select location. Where will it be saved, Gradle default? Your own JDK. No extra. If selected, uncheck it. When you click Create, it opens. What will you see? You'll see something like this again. Now, mine is a little different. Since I produce these for YouTube, I upload them to GitHub, so you can access them easily. All the code will be under this GitHub account. It will be under this repo of my GitHub account. That's why it looks like this for me. For you, the part that says J001 will be here. You'll also see SRC here. So, you'll see this Gradle SRC. It's not a big deal. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. I right-click on Java. I select New Java class. Here, I type com.muhammed.respirechrono. If you remember from our previous lesson, we tested printing something to the first screen. When I type PSVM here and press Enter, it provides the basic code structure. What are these commands you see here? What are they not? What are they used for? It's not important. We'll go step by step. There's no point in loading this at once. We'll see them, you'll learn them. So don't rush. We'll go step by step. Our first step, friends. Variables. There are basically two types in Java. Variables. The first of these is primitive data types. The second, reference data types. The first thing we'll see and learn at the beginning is the first one. The second one will come later, friends. We'll learn the logic and purpose of the second one later. Because to understand these reference data types, you need to learn about classes and how to create objects from classes. You need to know about methods. There's a right time for these things. If we just throw all this at you now, it gets really confusing. Class comes up, method comes up, this comes up. There's a lot of stuff. Actually, not really. It's just that the order is wrong. Because when things aren't taught in the right order, after a while the human brain starts to hate what it can't understand. You push it away. Those who are really dedicated to this can sometimes motivate themselves by saying, just wait a bit longer, just hang in there, and manage to get through it. But there's really no need. If we go step by step, everything will be solved. That's why the first thing we're going to learn is primitive data types. So what does that mean? Guys, primitive data types. Guys, primitive data types. We're going to learn these. There's a logic behind these primitive data types. They're types. Everything has logic. We'll be explaining each one of them in detail. Even within primitive data types, there are their own subdivisions. Guys, the first of these is numeric data types. So, if we call it 1.1, numeric data types, meaning those that contain numbers inside. So, when we enter a number, it's able to hold and store that number inside. You know, like I explained the logic in the previous lesson. Like when I told you to add the numbers I gave you. Adding 5 and 10 is easy, but adding 5-digit or 10-digit numbers isn't that easy. You have to write them down somewhere, and that's where variables come in. Friends, they take care of writing things down somewhere. Of course, numeric data types are also divided into categories among themselves, friends. The first of these numeric data types is integers. So, integer data types. And the second one, friends, is decimal numbers. That's how they're categorized. Apart from these, we have other data types. We'll talk about all of them. We'll go through each one step by step. Friends, the first thing we need to understand is integer types. These are the simplest and easiest ones. Let's list the integer types one by one. The first of these, friends, from the integer types, is byte. An integer type. Byte, friends, byte. We'll look at all the others, one by one, in order. There's no need to rush. So, you say integer. What is integer type good for? What are we going to do with it? Look. Let's say you're using a banking app and you're going to send money. You pick up your phone. You choose who you're going to send it to. Then you enter the amount, right? You enter the amount and hit send, and it goes. Now, when you enter the amount there, you're entering it as a numerical value. How is that numerical value stored? I mean, how is it sent? Have you ever thought about it? Okay, visually, what are you actually doing? You press the numbers. Guys, what you call a number on a computer is a number in the sense you understand. But for the computer, the number you enter is actually a character. So here, you're pressing any character. The computer interprets that character as a number. According to what does it interpret it as a number? It interprets it according to the variable defined within itself. If you press a letter, it interprets it as a text character, a text variable. If you press a number, it interprets it as a number. Did I explain that clearly? So here, you choose how the computer interprets the data it receives from you. Now, 5 is a numeric value, right? It's an integer value. But is there such a thing as a decimal 5 integer value? Logically, you don't have that. I mean, 5 is an integer. Teacher. Okay, but the computer can also interpret the integer 5 as the decimal number 5. You press 5. It can interpret it as a decimal number. But teacher, there's nothing after the decimal point. That's true, but the computer can still interpret it as 5.0. That's why the basic logic here is that when you enter data into the computer, you choose how it should interpret it. So, number types are types that we need to choose according to our needs. Friends. The first of these is the byte number type, friends. Now, let's talk about the byte number type. What is the byte number type? What is a variable? How is a variable defined? Let's continue starting from that. First of all, first, how is a variable defined? The way to define a variable is as follows, friends. First, you write the type of the variable. What is the type of the variable? Then, you write the name of the variable. Leave a space. After that, you say equals. Equals is used to assign a value. It's the assignment operator. Then, you assign the value, friends. You give its value. To give an example of this, the type of the variable, what did we say? We said byte, B-Y-T-E. Look, it completes itself. I'm going to give this the name of the variable. I'm saying, let's call this number equals. I come here and write 5. Here's what's happening, friends. This part here is the numeric value you've defined here. This value could be 5, 10, 15, it doesn't matter. It indicates that this value will be assigned to the number variable. This equals sign is the assignment operation. You can think of it as transferring this into that, and this is its type. Friends, this is the type of the variable. The process of defining a variable is always done this way, but when defining a variable, it's not always necessary to perform the assignment operation immediately. So, for example, you can write it like this. Byte number 2, for example, semicolon. Of course, here we forgot something, the semicolon. This operation is the process of defining a variable. The operation above, on the other hand, is both defining the variable and assigning a value to it. So, how do we assign a value to this variable? Teacher, you can do it like this. Number 2 equals, you can say 10, for example. Actually, the operation done above and the operation done in the 2 steps below are exactly the same. Here, we define the variable and assign a value to it right away. Here, we first define the variable and then assign a value. Can you do both? Yes, both are possible, friends. So, both of them. These are topics that will become clear as you understand and use them according to your needs. So honestly, there's no need to get stuck on this. This works, and so does this. When to use which will become clear over time. Okay. What else? You can define multiple variables at once. For example, byte number 3, comma number 4, comma number 5. This can go on. Guys, you can define as many variables like this as you want. The only thing we need to pay attention to here is this. When a code block is finished, in other words, when you say, I've finished writing the syntax of this code block, what do you need to do, guys? You need to put a semicolon at the end of the finished part. That's our basic rule here. The semicolon tells us that a line of code has ended. For example, here I've defined a variable and finished it. I've assigned a value to the variable and finished it. That's how it ends, guys. Now, for those who are just starting out and writing code for the first time, I want to emphasize the importance of this. Coding. Guys, so, the code you'll be writing, where you write it is really important for you. Look, you see these curly brackets here, right? Now, look, this area you see inside here. Here, this is the main method body, guys. The starting point of this in Java, the curly brackets define the start and end boundaries of any declaration. That's why it starts here, and it ends right here, guys. So, the place where you'll be writing your code, unless I say otherwise, is right here. You don't write code outside of this. So, you don't come out here and write code outside of it. Sir, can't we write code in these areas? You can. You can define variables, methods, inner classes. Yes, you can. But that's not the topic for now. We'll talk about it when the time comes. So, for now, you shouldn't write code in those places. This is the part one especially warn my students about. Come to the end of these curly braces, // These double slashes, friends, are what we call comments or comment lines. They have nothing to do with the code itself. They're only used to add explanations. So what do you write here? You say, end of main. Then you come to this one. And here, you write end of class. Why do we write this? You'll see in the future. There will be nested curly braces like this. This is inside this. This is inside this. This is inside this. At that point, it gets confusing. You get them mixed up. So, to keep these from getting tangled, I protect the structure here like this. At least until you get used to it. We'll keep doing it this way until you get the boundaries clear in your mind. That's why you need to be very careful here. If you write them like this, we can continue without any problems. Now, this is how you define a variable, friends. Look, I defined a variable here. Good. As you can see, my variables have been defined. So, what are we going to do next? Teacher, we've defined the variables. What did we do? What's going to happen? What will happen in the end? Variables operate over time. They'll be used in addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I'll get to them in upcoming lessons. Print them. Print a variable. Now, here I said S out. If you remember, S out prints to the screen. It's used to output to the screen. I put double quotes here. I say, number is plus whatever it is. Let it be number 2, for example. Number 2. Print number 2 to the screen. Look, now I right-click. I click Run. On the screen, what's the value of number 2 there? It was 10. Guys, I'm coming to the value of the number. So, the value of number 2 is 10. If I had just written number here, this time it would have printed the value inside the number, which is 5, to the screen. When you look, you see 5 on the screen. So, this is how the variable declaration process you see here works. Assignment is done like this. When you want to print it to the screen, you tell the variable, come here. It prints its value. We'll get to the logic. Again, logic is very important. If you stick to the logic, then in all future lessons, not just Java. Here, I'm teaching you Java, but I'm not teaching Java. I'll explain logic. If you grasp this logic, you can understand any programming language you want easily. You can continue. There's one more thing I want to say. In any programming language, the thing that carries the basic features of that language is called syntax, friends. Syntax. You can think of it as grammar. So when you learn a language, and I'm not talking about a programming language, you're learning regular English, right? What do you do when you're learning English? You memorize vocabulary. What else? How do you form a sentence? You learn grammar. So, the subject is here, the predicate is there, the adverb of time is somewhere else, and so on. What do you do with all of these? You learn them. You learn how they're structured, how they're put together. And you start forming sentences. It's the same for us here as well. Look. You've just learned a new word, byte. You've learned what this word is used for. You've learned, with its grammar, how a value is assigned to it. This is syntax, folks. We call the way this is written syntax. After that, you printed it to the screen. That's it. We quickly moved on to integer variables, to the concept of variables. Now we're also going to talk about the logic behind these. In our next video, we'll continue with the logic.